Okay, I'd like to welcome you to part 6 and the final portion of the Bible study portion of the Olivet Discourse regarding 70 AD. This video probably going to take too long, because we're nearing the end of the prophecies before Jesus kind of goes into the parables and stuff like that about the goodman of the house and these types of things. But we're going to basically wrap this up and, and then we're going to put all of this together and just kind of show you the points. Now, why am I only using Matthew? Why am I not using Mark or Luke or whatever? Well, Mark is a good rendition of this as well. I believe he might have been a eyewitness account to what Jesus said. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact Matthew was. Okay, Luke basically, he came after the time of Christ. He was a Gentile writer. So basically his gospel is kind of like, I want to say like a hearsay type thing. But again, you can still pick up the same narrative. But the reason why I'm using Matthew specifically is because this was a eyewitness account to what Jesus was telling his disciples, because Matthew was there. Okay, so this is why I decided to go exclusively with Matthew, but you can still pick up the same highlights in Mark 13 and Luke 21. So, obviously in Matthew 24, 23 through 26, we go into this general overview of the entire end time picture here, where Jesus basically is continuing his discussion, his private conference, if you will, with his disciples. And the reason why I kept this white and not highlighted this yellow or green is because this is applicable to both time periods. The time period of the last days, basically after Christ's ascension into heaven, after his, when he appeared unto the disciples during the time of Acts, until the present time. It says, "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall rise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not." So, if you're seeing these weird visions of Jesus or whatever, folks, he is coming again, and the only time he's coming again is every eye will see him. Not little visions here from some person here that nobody else saw or anything. Every eye will see him. Okay? But this is basically a general overview that is applicable to both questions that the disciples asked here in Matthew 24. Okay, this is why I have not highlighted as to any specific period. Now, in verses 27 through 31, this is based, when you look at this, obviously this is talking about a future event. "For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even of the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heaven to the other." And when does this happen? After the tribulation of those days. Basically, when does this happen? Well, when the dead in Christ rise first, and those that remain will be caught up together with them to be with the Lord forever. And that happens at the end of the tribulation. And then he goes on to another general narrative here. "Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye." So he's speaking to his disciples and to the readers. "Whoso readeth, let him understand. when you shall see all these things, okay, know that it is near, even at the door. So this was applicable to both time periods. The time period preceding the destruction of the temple, and also the time period now present preceding the return of Christ. Now, again, here we go with a very tricky verse, and this is where a lot of people might get confused, because they see this and they say, well, see, this isn't talking about no present time. Well, technically it is, and it's also talking about the time prior to the destruction of the temple, because they see the word these things. But here's something very interesting. In the next verse, it says, verily I say unto you, which I highlighted in yellow, which is basically referring to the destruction of the temple. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Now, what is left out in verse 33 that we see in verse 34 that makes a total difference? And this is why that this verse 34 was basically Jesus fulfilling the first question. When shall all these things be? Meaning the destruction of the temple, when there shall not be left here one stone upon another, and these types of things. Well, the word that's left out in verse 33 is this generation. And when you truly understand the context of this, when you put Matthew 23 and 24 together, we see what this generation is. Okay? Matthew 23, verse 36 through 38 explains this perfectly. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. You see that right here? And you see that right here? It's the same thing. You do not see this right up above. So this is basically the Matthew 24, 32, and 33 is basically a proverb of some sort, a figure of speech, or a parable, in these types of things, that is applicable to both time periods. This is not just to one specific time period. And then Jesus makes the final answer to the question of when shall these things be fulfilled regarding the destruction of the temple. And he says, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. You back up to Matthew 23, 36 through 38, it says, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Okay, so there's going to come a time where the house of Jerusalem, Jerusalem is going to be a desolate house, meaning the Spirit of God is no longer going to be present there. There's no longer going to come a time where, we have to go to Jerusalem to feel the presence of God and these types of things. That's going to be done away with. That's done. Okay? And again, you see the very clear reference of this generation and this generation right here. Okay? So, in Matthew 24, verse 35, we pick up. With heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. This is applicable to both times, obviously. And then we pick up the answer to the end of the age or the end of the world and these types of things. Basically time applying to time future. In verse 36 through 42. And it says, but at that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noe were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark. Now pay close attention to this. This is where a lot of people get confused about the taken and left. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So, who was taken? The people that were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage, while Noah was giving these warnings. And these people that were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, going on with their daily lives, basically ignored the warnings from Noah and these things, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, what does the next verse say? Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. The ones that are left are the good guys. The ones that are taken are the bad guys. Two women shall be grinding at the mill. The one shall be taken, bad guys, and the other left, good guys. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. This applies to basically the future. And then Jesus finishes off this discussion with a couple parables. And 43 through 51. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant, whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And if that evil servant shall say in his heart, My Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, I got a feeling that's going to really apply here to these worldly type churches, and these people that are acting so worldly, by totally, going after fallen actors and these types of things. See, I'm not going to get into it. But the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion. With the hypocrites there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So hopefully in these 6 videos, I basically, hopefully I explained everything as clear as I can in regarding to the prophetic output of Matthew 24. That there are 3 narratives that Jesus is talking about here. You have a general narrative which is applied to both time periods, the time of the disciples and Jesus, as well as the time yet future, which is the entire last days, which starts basically in the time of Acts and continues and is culminated in the future at the return of Christ. That is basically the narrative of Matthew 24. And the thing that I really wanted to concentrate on was 70 AD, and we highlighted those points. Now in the next video, I'm going to basically read a historian's viewpoint of what happened in 70 AD, and it is kind of gruesome, so I do forewarn you of that, and I'm not going to just leave out things. I'm going to read it as it is, and then you're going to see what happened here, okay? There's a lot of interesting things that happened in 70 AD and also 4 or 5 years prior to that regarding some signs and wonders and visions that happened preceding, basically giving the people of Jerusalem fair warning to get out. Something is about to happen, and these types of things, and as well as what was going on during the time of the siege of Jerusalem. That perfectly describes the first question that the disciples asked, is when shall all these things be, regarding the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And then after that, I'm going to play you a 2-hour clip. It's not going to be me talking. This is going to be from a radio interview a few years ago regarding the Wailing Wall. Is it part of the temple? Because if it is a part of the second temple, then that would make Jesus Christ to be a liar when he said that there shall not be one stone left upon another. Or is that Wailing Wall something else? And a lot of people are probably really not going to accept this because they have been taught all their lives that that wall over there is part and partial of the remnant of the temple that once stood. But after this interview and clear-cut evidence from a modern historian who actually, lives or lived in Israel, who will show you that the location of this wall is not where the temple was. And therefore, that wall is not even part of the temple. It was a wall casing that went around the temple, yes, but that was also part and parcel of the old Roman fort called Fort Antonia, and that is what is still standing over there. That's what that Wailing Wall is. It is not part of the second temple, because it would make Jesus Christ out to be a liar if he said, when he said, these stones will be left, not one stone will be left upon another till all these things would be thrown down. He meant that literally. He meant that to happen literally. So that would mean either Jesus is a liar, or that Wailing Wall over there is not part of that temple. Stay tuned, because the video after the events of 70 AD, I'm going to play you that audio interview, and then we're going to carry on with this series. Truth be told, truth be known, stay safe. God bless. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Okay, I'd like to welcome you to part 6 and the final portion of the Bible study portion of the Olivet Discourse regarding 70 AD. This video probably going to take too long, because we're nearing the end of the prophecies before Jesus kind of goes into the parables and stuff like that about the good men of the house. Might have been a eyewitness account to what Jesus said. I'm not sure, but I know for a fact Matthew was. Okay, Luke, basically, he came after the time of Christ. He was a Gentile writer, so basically his gospel is kind of like, I want to say like a hearsay type thing, but again, you can still pick up the same narrative. But the reason why I'm using Matthew's house and these types of things, but we're gonna basically wrap this up, and and then we're gonna put all of this together and just kind of show you the points. Now, why am I only using Matthew? Why am I not using Mark or Luke or whatever? Well, Mark is a good rendition of this as well. I believe he used specifically is because this was a eyewitness account to what Jesus was telling his disciples, because Matthew was there. Okay, so this is why I decided to go exclusively with Matthew. But you can still pick up the same highlights in Mark 13 and Luke 21. So obviously, in Matthew 24, 23 through 26, we go